You ready for rock?
Yeah, gonna click live.
Pause keyboard.
And we're live.
We're live. We're big. Well, as I say, we're big, we're bad, and we're back, and I'm in black, but I think I'm actually in dark blue. Isn't that exciting stuff? Here we are. Oh, YouTube says we're live. Got the email. This dude's live. Okay, hope you're all doing marvelously well. We thought, well, let's do a live stream because everybody's always asking to do live streams. And what should we talk about? Well, we've been talking about drums the last couple of episodes, so why not go crazy and do drumtastic conversation? Who do we have on? We have Owen and Andrew and Clay and Dave and Devin and Kevin and Kirsey and Kevin and James and Jordan and Devin and Todd and Sir Egbert Fartalot, Devin, Daniel, Blue Wave Dave, Anita. I'm trying to get everybody. Alessandro, Michael, Scott, Ben, Mark, Cato, Alex. Hi, Trollstream, Worshipcaster, hello Kyle, hello Necrodogs. Well, how are you all? Hope you're doing marvellously well. Jeff McDonald, haven't seen or spoken to you in a little bit. Hope you're well. Emiliano, Aaron, David, Willow, Stash, Matthew, Silvio, Eric, DL, Jurgen, how are you? Third Power, Alberto, John Ringo Powers. Now that's a cool name. Delvin, Philip, Matthew, Matty, Clay, John, Alberto, Art, Chris, Alberto, twice, Sheila, Chris. So how are you all? Now, a couple of things. We have the drum mix that we did the other day, which was using, which was from the masterclass session. So that masterclass session had like inexpensive drum mics. It had a Lewitt drum kit on it. Is that what it's called? The drum mic package? How about that? That sounds good. Versus lots and lots of very nice microphones and, of course, the console. Somebody asked, actually, on one of the videos whether you could hear the cheap mics going through an expensive console. And yes, we have those too. We've done every variation. We've done inexpensive mics through expensive mic pre's. We've done expensive mics through cheaper mic pre's. We've done every variation in all of, in the sort of 400 plus videos that we've done. So there's quite a few in there. I think we should probably make a drum playlist. Actually, there probably is a drum playlist if you go and look, and you can check them all out. Hello, Jamie. Hello, DJ. Hello, Adam. How are you? Faxit Puppeteer. A puppeteer. Nice. Tim Glenn. Backastration Orchestration. That's a cool one. Lee, how are you? Mike. Michael. Wow. Vives Castleline. Nain. Justice Forcia. Nice. How do you mix modern metal drums without samples? That's a frickin' huge question. It's interesting because whenever I watch those sort of videos, you know, there's a couple of companies that do like metal stuff and modern things. I have to be honest, they do heavily rely on samples, don't they? It's a big discussion. You know, this mixing we did here, we didn't use any samples whatsoever. And it really depends on the results. I firmly believe that you need to learn how to do every different variation. You need to know how to make a drum sound good with 3 mics, and that's it. You need to understand how to record and mix the Glyn Johns technique, which would be the mic over, you know, pulled back but over the floor tom area, one above the snare and hi-hat, and one pulled back in front of the kit. The principle of that is to make an equilateral triangle. So if you get an equilateral triangle, it's hard to show in a two-dimensional world, obviously, on YouTube. But if you think about it logically, if you get an equilateral triangle, you have 3 microphones equally a distance away from each other. Therefore, in theory, the phase or the polarity should be good because they'll all be hearing everything the same distance away. That, you know, is a smart kind of idea. And there is something special about a mic pulled back over the floor tom area facing the kick and snare. It does sound pretty remarkable. And if you know, I've done a lot of videos using a mono mic. I was talking just yesterday with Cherry Hammock, who does all the Beatles books. And we were talking about the one mic position. And there is, of course, the over the whole drum kit, or the pulled back over the whole drum kit sound, which is great. But you usually find people blend that with a kick to get more oomph. Or sometimes, but usually something pulled back on the kick drum, which is also another place you could put it. You could pull it back mono. But I think ultimately when it comes to mono drum miking, you have to experiment based on the room, the drums, but probably most importantly, after those things at least, but I think actually most importantly, the drummer. Because the biggest discussion when it comes to getting a good drum sound, honestly, is the drum performance. If you're dealing with a drummer who is just splashing these cymbals so unbelievably loud, it doesn't matter what you do with your close mics or whatever. If the cymbals are 10 times louder than the rest of the kit, then you're going to have problems. There's so many, you know, mixing courses and this, that, and the other that we all have out there. I've done them, everybody's done them, but they're so dependent on the drum performance. So I firmly believe in this. When you're talking about modern metal, I think a lot of it's got to do probably with the performance. With some of the modern metal stuff, the drummer may or may not have that ability to balance the drum kit. So if they're playing like super fast kick drums, but like this, because that way to get fast technique is to play it super fast very lightly. So it's like, the poor mixer ends up, you know, compressing and EQing that really aggressively, but everything is, everything is being picked up by something else. They haven't quite got it. So it's a tough one. So they end up sticking a sample on it. But there's another reason why they put the sample on. It's because of the expectations. I listen to a lot. I'm not saying all. No way am I blanketing genres. This is really important. It's just like a lot of stuff I listen to, I hear those samples. So if you're a modern rock band or a modern metal band and you're trying to compete, you know, that's what you're going to do. It's pretty normal. It's pretty understandable if you're in that world. It doesn't matter what genre it is. If you're in pop and you want a certain drum sound, you're going to listen to other contemporary things and try to compete with it and use contemporary tricks. My point is, and I firmly believe this, is that you need, honestly, I will go on record as saying you need to understand all ways of recording. 1 mic, 2 mics, 3 mics, 4 mics, 5 mics, an enormous amount of mics on everything, top and bottom, big rooms, small rooms, completely dead rooms that have no ambience, rooms that have so much ambience it's uncontrollable. Genres you need to do: reggae, metal, pop, jazz. You need to understand how to record all of these things, and it's not outside of your reach. Also, you need to get a great drum sound without any drum samples, but you also need to understand how you would employ drum samples as well. This is the point. I think it's okay if you're one of those very, very handful of fortunate people in the world that can go, I only record 70s rock, which is about 4 people. I only do 70s style rock bands. I only work with bands that sound like Zeppelin. If that's true, and you're in that blessed position, and that you want to do a boutique drum sound and always have that one amazing drum sound, God bless you. If that's your thing, and you do Glyn Johns, and you only work with bands that do 1 or 2 guitar overdubs like Zeppelin did, then God bless you. But if you work with Metallica style bands and you're doing modern metal and it is a stack full of like huge amps with virtual amps and massive guitar sounds, and it's literally a square wave of guitars, then putting 1 or 2 mics on a drum kit is not going to cut it. How can you get the kick and the snare to cut? And I'm sure everybody will go, no, I can do it. Well, you know what? I have never heard it, but let's be honest. It's like, if you're going to compete in that world and you want massive drum sounds, then you have to learn those techniques that people employ. If you want a Metallica drum sound, if that's what you're going for, right? You know, there's no right way or wrong with it, but that's what you want to combat massive guitars, then you have to learn those techniques. And I believe that we're blessed with incredible technology and incredible knowledge available out there that you can do that. that you can learn to do modern metal drums, as well as learning how to record a drum kit perfectly in phase with 3 microphones. Yeah, and Gautier is saying he loves drum samples. I mean, I just love using whatever it needs for the song. I'm not a Luddite, I'm not a purist, I'm not a anything. I'm a whatever it takes to get the best results. If I am going to do something modern metal, then it's going to be like that. If I'm going to do something jazz, then it is pretty open sounding, amazingly beautiful recorded drums, all about the performance of an incredible jazz drummer. We have to learn multiple techniques at all times. Okay, I'm going to scroll through and pick up some more questions. Feel free to use the super chat. You will get pushed in front, in the front of the queue. Not a problem to do. Yes, I'm going to Abbey Road next week. I'll be at Abbey Road. I don't know if anybody else is going to be there, but I'm there next week. Is it next week or the week after? Oh, week after, sorry. No, next week. Next week I'm at Abbey Road. Emiliano says, I have a lot of trouble mixing in bass and kick because I have very small speakers, 4.5 inches, and I can only hear the harmonics. Any tips on how to deal with that? I would invest in a sub if you think your room can deal with it. If not, it's headphones with good low-end response. One of the things I do like about the Blues is they are a little extended on the low end. However, you don't want your headphones or your speakers to lie to you, or in your instance, not even reveal the low end. So, obvious things. Check in multiple situations. Also, make sure you get something you love the low end of, a mix that you love the low end on, or preferably 3, 4, 5, or even possibly 6 mixes that you love the low end on, and then reference those through your speakers and in other environments. Like, have them on a stick, a USB stick, have them available to them, have them on your iPhone, your Android, whatever you use. So whenever a situation you're in, you go to a new room, open it up and play it. And I'm not talking about worrying about the difference between Tidal and Spotify and iTunes and whatever. I'm talking about basic logical test of low end. Just get it onto a device that you travel with, or a USB stick, or a combination of both. So when you go to a different room, you go to your car, you go to your friend's car, reference, and you will start to learn. And it's amazing. You'll come back to your studio and you'll hear different things, like, oh, you'll start to hear things differently because you're focusing in on stuff. However, you have a bigger question, and your bigger question is 4.5-inch speakers. Yes, it's going to be very tough to hear anything down 40 or 60. If you are hearing it, it's artificial and you're boosting the schnizzle out of it to hear it. And that, of course, means that when you go to sit in your car or your friend's car and you play the kick drum back, it will blow up the car. Because to get it audible on speakers that small, it's going to be cranked. So, if your room can sustain it, then I highly recommend getting a sub. There are subs available at about $100-ish. Yamaha make one that I used to use with my NS10s, which was about $120 or $140. I don't believe it's more than that. It's a home theater one, and I learned it from Mark Needham, and a couple of other mixers told me about it, and they were using it, and it's super inexpensive. So I would thank you, WagTunes. That's very nice of you. As Poo Ninja says, we just have to say the words Poo Ninja. I'm sure it's just a great name, so we have to say it. He says, always check on multiple systems. Exactly, check on multiple systems. So that would be my advice. Check on multiple systems, as Poo Ninja says. But most importantly, get reference tracks. Get things that you love. What genre are you in? What are you trying to emulate? Maybe you work in several genres and you want to have some key mixes in those genres, and get used to them. It's one of the important things I learned early on, was to know your music. And if there is like a half a dozen songs that you know, then use them. A reference track I have been using for decades and still continue to do is, of course, Woman in Chains. Woman in Chains by Tears for Fears, mixed by Bob Clearmountain, is still, I think, one of the greatest mixes ever. Another one is Slave to the Rhythm by Grace Jones. These are older, quote-unquote, mixes. However, they have amazing extended low-end and high-end and are phenomenal sounding. Anything that Sly and Robbie played on in the 80s or early 90s is great for low-end. There's certain things, it doesn't matter on the genre, it's just testing the boom and fizzness, the low end, the high end, the detail up there, the stereo image. In Bob Clearmountain's mixes, the stereo image, the front to back depth, all of that stuff is really important. If you have half a dozen songs, maximum, don't need more than that you know so well and are so detailed, you can move from one system to another and be like, oh, I don't like that, I do like that. I really firmly believe that. All right, 3 for Parker says, thank you for the super chat. Says, my internal kick channel sometimes has a pressure cooker sound to it, as if it's compressed air. The kick is ported. How do I reduce that pressure sound? Are you talking about the doink, 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 doink? If that's what you're talking about, very, very common. Number one thing that every drummer will do. Now, you can buy these, by the way. You can buy these like things that look like almost like pads, black pads. They're usually black. I'm sure they come in other colors, that you can put inside the kick drum and lean up against the front head. The batter head. So one person's front is another one's back. So anyway, where the beater's hitting, for instance. So you can lay it up against that, and then what happens is that will immediately reduce that boinky boinky sound. Another thing you can do, quite frankly, is take a blanket, a good old-fashioned blanket, put it in there, and then put something heavy on it. It can be something as dumb as a brick. Take a brick and put it on there, and then lean it up against that head. And it only has to be a little piece of blanket, like maybe this much that's touching, and a bit of weight against it, like a brick on it, will do amazing jobs. The next thing I would do is go to your head at the front and flick it. Is it going boing? Is it got tone? If it's got tone and you don't like it, like flick around that head where the port is, flick around it, and if you're hearing tone, maybe slacken off just one of the lugs so it's out of tune. So the whole thing actually still rings, but it just takes it out, and it might then solve the problem. So go around, check for rings, but ultimately just putting a little bit of padding on that beater head is going to make a huge difference, and then finding other horrible rings. Now, don't get me wrong, some people like to tune their kicks. I don't personally tune it to the key of the song. Thank you, Daily Drum Lessons, for your wonderful donation there. I really appreciate it. It's to buy coffee for an intern. Whoa. We used to do these. People would buy us breakfast, so I appreciate it, or lunch, so I appreciate it. So yes, please, any super chats, I will definitely answer those first. I see White Sea Studios here. Hi, White Sea and Julianne. How are you both? Hope you're doing marvelously well. Project says monitoring on speech levels definitely improved my bass mixes. Yes, I think if you're monitoring at a low level, that would be really, really good. Monitor at a level that about 85 dB or 83 dB is kind of common, around that, no louder than 85. That will get you a lot more even low end. Although obviously, Project, as that question was asking before, you do need speakers that reproduce it. And if you are working on 5 inches and less, definitely 4.5 inches, it's tough. If you're going to hear audible 60 hertz down there, it's too loud. It's too loud. If you're getting 60 hertz pumping evenly at 85 dB on a 4.5 inch speaker, I don't care who designed it or whatever, it's going to be too loud. It's not going to translate, because that area, the 60 to 40 hertz, is not reproduced effectively on very small speakers. So getting a sub would be the way to go. However, as we're pointing out, it'd have to be a room that would sustain it. You know, that would be really, really great. So let me see other questions here. So many. And please feel free to use the super chat. You will get pushed to the front of the queue. If recording a kick and wanted to get a sound like John Bonham's, what would you recommend for echo and reverb? Great question, David. I think ultimately the sound of John Bonham's drums are drums in a room. There's 3 mics on the kit, but it's 3 mics on a kit in an open sounding room. So all of the ambience is bleeding into those 3 mics. There is then also compression on those 3 mics, and then it is hitting tape. And well, it's going to a mic pre and probably right on the verge of grit. Tomorrow we have a video coming out, which I really want you to check out. We recorded drums in a castle in Germany, courtesy of Thomann. So tomorrow, check it out, and you can download all of the drum files, and you can get all of the drum samples of it. And what we did is we used UAD's Helios mic pre's, and we crunched them. So you're going to get to hear what it sounds like to hear Helios crunched mic pre's going you know, through nice microphones, recorded through nice microphones in a castle. So it's a pretty interesting drum sound, so you can check that out. It does prove a lot about the drummer, the room, the drums, the room, and the room. I mean, it really was a lot about it. So my point is like, you can listen to it, you'll be able to solo it and listen to the overhead microphones and realize that the ambience is in all of those microphones. So if you're trying to get a John Bonham sound, you've got to bear in mind it's not always about, you know, the room mic. It's also in all of that ambience. So you've got microphone hitting mic pre hard, then hitting compression probably fairly hard, then hitting tape and being compressed again, and also getting a low bump from the tape, that bit of extra oomph. So there's a lot of things going on. So when the transients finally, you know, come out the other end, they're all nicely rounded off. And so all those transients, those harsh transients have all been rounded off by beautiful tube microphone, going into beautiful old mic pre, going to compression, going to tape, and they're coming out all rounded off. In the wonderful world of digital, which most of us are in 99% of our lives, we don't have the benefit of all of those things. So when you're trying to get the quote-unquote John Bonham sound, you want to be going for all of that. It's not just all about the miking. You know, there's a million videos on the Glyn Johns technique on drums. It's great, but bear in mind there's a lot more going on. Number one, the drummer. The drums the drummer is playing. The actual performance the drummer put in. And the room, the room, the room, and the room. So if you're trying to get that sound, then what I would do is I would record the drums that way. And then, yes, if you're in a tiny, tiny little room, take that drum blend, get a nice, beautiful 3-mic drum blend, and send it to a reverb. But not before you have put a nice emulation of an old mic pre on it. And there are many. There's affordable ones. Mac DSP does the analog channel, which gives you like tape emulation. The wonderful world of Waves has the J37 for the tape emulation. I'm not even going to it doesn't matter. I'm not going to name drop a particular company, but the reality is there's lots of people that will give you that sound before you even get to reverb. But bear in mind, get those things down, then make a blend, a nice accurate blend of the drum mics, and send that to a room, you know, a reverb, and then start dialing that in, and you'll get closer to the sound of a Bonham in a large room. Remember, that's the reality. It's the drummer with the drums, their actual performance, then the microphones, then the mic pre's coloring, then the compression that was being used, then the tape. It's creating all those things. So those 3 mics give you that sound, but you do have to start with a great drummer with a great drum kit. And if you don't have the room, that's where you come to using reverb. Alexi says, question to Warren, if you're experiencing mixing acoustic drums, so mixing electronic drums are the approach there. Well, electronic drums, there's so many versions of those. I went to a seminar about a year ago, and I'm blanking on the guy's name, I apologize, and it was a famous modern rock mixer. And what he was doing was he was recording drums with pads, and then he was adding samples to the pads, and then putting live cymbals against it, and all of those samples were triggering, you know, reverbs, etc. And he's a very famous modern drum mixer, you know, who does tons of huge albums. So drum pads, then they edited the MIDI tight. Then they added drum samples to it, and then they added live cymbals over the top to make the kit feel more cohesive. And then that was then sent through reverbs and delays and with samples and everything. And that was a modern drum mix and doing massive modern rock records. So, you know, that's a whole different world. And the reason why they were doing that was the ability, so they printed it and then they could then manipulate the MIDI so it triggered super tight. Again, it's going back to, like, you know, the modern rock way of recording, and it's not the way it's only done, but it's a way that a lot of people do. Okay, any other super chats? If not, I'm going to go fishing. I'm going fishing for questions.
B Nana Man has a super chat.
Who has?
B Nana Man.
Hasn't come up here. Oh, here we go. Studio drummer for professional recordings. How? How do you become a professional studio drummer? Is that what you're saying? That's a tough one. I mean, it's not just it's not just a quick, hey, I'm available. That's how you start your career. But you're not going to go from zero to getting paid a lot of money quickly. All the drummers that we use for studio drummers all have a ton of experience. A ton of experience. They've worked with so many engineers and producers. And what they have learned is things like everything we're talking about. Studio drummers have learned to, first of all, here's a dumb one, a really simple one, to set their cymbals and the hi-hats up away from their drums. Number one thing, every studio drummer I know, if their snare drum is here, the hi-hat is at least here. And I'm talking about all the guys. I'm talking about Vinny, I'm talking about Victor and Drizzo, Blair, everybody that we use. That's how Brendan Buckley, they all set up the hi-hat a long way away from their snare. Because they know that the engineer wants a good separation between their hi-hat and their snare. Number one thing. It might sound simple, but if you want to be a first call for an engineer, help them out. We're all engineers and producers here. Help them out by giving them the opportunity to get great separation between the snare drum and the hi-hat. It's really a huge deal. I know it sounds very simple, but yeah, just think about it. I'm going to call you back. Hey, I like the way that guy played. I could get great drum sounds from him. So simple separation. Next thing is don't have your cymbals just hanging over your toms. Because if you're boom, and you hit a tom, and I turn up the tom and all I'm hearing is it's as obvious that. Cymbals nice and high above the toms. If you're the drummer who goes, well, man, that hinders my technique. It's well, it doesn't hinder all of these top session players' technique, and they've learned to work around it. Again, it means that I can solo those toms if I want and listen to them and hear nice, clean, ringing toms without tons and tons of cymbal bleed. And then getting back to an earlier part that we've had is for the drummer to understand how to balance their drum kit. Should be kick, snare, a kick, snare, tom, 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 cymbal, not kick, snare, a kick, snare. And trust me, I know that sounds really, really obvious, but it's a massive thing that sorts out, the men from the boys, the girls from the women. It's what sorts it out. It's I'll get a young band coming in or an inexperienced band. It's not even an age thing. Don't get me wrong, because there's young drummers that can play around everybody. Look at Bonham, he was 19. He died, he was 32, I believe, when he died. So he was only 32 years old after making all of those incredible records. So youth has nothing to do with it. It's not an age thing, it's an experience thing. And you can get your experience when you're young, or you can get your experience when you're older. It's nothing to do with age. The point is when I work with inexperienced recording drummers, and they've never recorded or rarely recorded, it's the number one thing. They play their cymbals like they're at a gig, like they're trying to add excitement. And you bring up the room mics and they're all it's and the room mics are absolutely useless. I want my room mics to go I don't want Now there's tricks we can do. We can use a little saturation and just distort the high end. We've been doing that for decades. People have been doing that for decades. However, I'm distorting the high end, I'm also taking away the high end on my kick and my snare. So my bite's going. It makes it better and easier when I distort the high end on my room mic. So try that. However, there's nothing better than a good, clean performance. So everything we're talking about from recording drums should be applied to you as a session player. As a session player, you want those gigs, you need to think that way. And that's how you get the gigs, combined with being a good person, being somebody that listens and is responsive and isn't showing off, but is playing the song. It's another great thing about session players. I've had many, many sessions where the first take is the one we use, because the drummer knows how to sound like he has or she has been playing in the band for 10 years. Who just comes in and knows how to frame the song. They sit there, they listen to the playback, they learn the track, and then they go in and they're like, and they frame the song. And you're like, wow, you sound like you've been playing it for years, because they have learned those things. It's a great thing to do as a session player. So, good balanced drum performances. making it so that it's easy to mic and it's easy to get good results by keeping your cymbals away from your toms and your hi-hat away from your snare. Logical stuff. Having nice, well-tuned drums and knowing how to do that is another big deal. Know how to tune your drums. You know, I've tuned far too many drummers' drum kits. I've done it hundreds of times. It's so much nicer when I walk into a room and a drummer knows how to tune their drums. Learn how to tune your drums. Big, big deal. Okay, let's keep going. Any other super chats?
It does look like there was a second part to Banana Man's question, because let's see, Studio Drummer is a plugin in Native Instruments.
Oh, okay. Well, cool. I like to answer that question anyway. Studio Drummer is in Native Instruments. I've never used it, but I will. If we want to talk about, that's a great question. If you want to talk about using, I don't want to spend. Let's talk about it. Yeah. So let's talk about using those. If we talk about using drum plugins, that's pretty interesting. In fact, we're doing a giveaway. What are we doing a giveaway of?
Producing drums with Matt Starr.
We're doing producing drums with Matt Starr as a giveaway. We're going to do 3. This is our first one. It's 11 o'clock. We'll do one now, one at 11:30, and one at 12, just before 12 when we finish. And on the last one, we'll also give away a year's membership to the Academy. Okay, so my first thing I would say, oh, you know what? This is a marvelous point to answer this question and also talk about using virtual drums. So yes, there's so many virtual drums. My question would be to win producing drums with Matt Starr, who, as you know, plays drums with Mr. Big and Ace Frehley, and is just an all-round great guy and a very good friend of ours. So to win his course, I want to know, do you use virtual drums? Do you use Easy Drummer? Do you use Slate? Do you use Native Instruments? Do you use Addictive Drums? Whose one do you use? Let us know. And if you don't use one and you only record live drums, you can say, I record live drums. Or, third answer, I don't use any of them. That's fine. And let us know, and you can win a copy of Matt Starr's producing drums. And in the meantime, I'm going to search for some more questions while we're doing that. Kenka says that he is, he's a student at Art EZ or Art EZ. Yeah, that's a great, great school in the Netherlands, so congratulations. Yes, I mean, if you're there, you can do a Skype call with me. If you're low on mics, how many mics can you get? How many mics can you get away with making a good recording on a 5-piece Tama kit? I think it really depends, quite frankly. That's a really, really good question. I mean, to be honest, you could, if I think it gets back to what we're talking about. If the drummer is amazingly talented and really, really even, then yes, 3 mics, the Glyn Johns technique will do an amazing job. It will do really, really amazingly well. And I think that, you know, with those 3 kind of mics and that width, we're going to be able to reproduce the drum performance accurately, and that's ultimately what it is. I think otherwise you're sort of like at the mercy of individually recording. The reason why we end up using so many mics is purely and simply for control over so many different elements of a drum kit. So if you're going to do that, then literally you have to sort of base it on you know, what the drummer is like. And I think for a 5-piece kit, if you're talking kick, snare, and then 3 toms, if that's how you're judging it, then, you know, individual mics on the toms would be great for a drummer that's not that balanced. And obviously also on dense mixes, because if you've got super, super dense mixes, then it's nice to be able to, you know, have individual control of the toms. But yeah, it's a tough one. It really is. It all comes down to the genre you're doing. Can you get away with like 3 mics on the kit or not? You know, it really does. If it's got 3 mics on the kit would be great for like something with 1 or 2 guitars, bass and drums. that would work absolutely beautiful. Okay, let's go back and see if we can find some great questions. So many questions here. There hasn't been a survey on that yet, Mark, but are you, Mark, are you in the academy? Oh, by the way, and please, you know, can you please hit the like button as well while you're answering these questions? That'd be absolutely amazing. Michael Schmidt says, is there a key advantage of recording a live drum performance versus programming using samples only? Thanks. Yeah, I think there is. I'm down to put programmed drums in and stuff like that. Here is the #1 reason for using a live drummer. #1 reason. Performance and creativity. It's as simple as that. I firmly believe the reason why we do Produce Like a Pro, the #1 reason is community. Community, community, community. It's all about creating and sustaining community. We're all here to help each other. You know, 99% of the time, there is a focus on people helping each other and just keeping it on that. There's very, very few times we get any distractions. Most of the time, like looking in this commentary here, most of the commentary is about, honestly, people helping each other. And it's a very unique place. It's very unique, and we're very blessed in our community to be like that. And collaboration and community is important. So taking that philosophy, it comes from recording. For me, it's like, I was a fairly shy kid, believe it or not, as loud as I am now. And I did so much on my own. I spent hours playing guitar, 6 to 8 hours a day, you know, learning to be a great guitar player. The biggest difference for me was when I got into a band and started interacting with other people. And then when I started recording, it's like, that's where it all becomes prevalent. Collaboration. There's a reason why we always go back. Always, it is a big word to say, but always, and I'm saying it again, always go back to Motown and, you know, Motown, Stax and Atlantic. You know, we come back to those periods and we all love them. The songwriting, the performances, the recording, we love it all. Why is that? That's because the songwriters were phenomenal. The performers were phenomenal, the singers. The production was amazing. They had the best engineers. But most importantly, they had the best players in every possible position. Whether it be recorded in Detroit or Motown in Detroit or in LA, as a lot of it was done in the mid-late 60s. If you had a guy like Hal Blaine as your drummer, you've got that brain, you've got that creativity, you've got this drummer there like Hal Blaine who knows how to play to the song, talking of playing to songs. So why do we use live drummers? It's for that. You want to hire a person or hope or bring in the band or whatever and work with that drummer because they are another member of your collaborative team, of your own personal community to bring something to it. So it's great that you can sit there and program away. I love programming drums. Well, I enjoy it. But the point is I'd rather not. I'd rather, if given the band or the budget, I'd rather be able to like have that person like, you know, be an incredible player that lifts up our, you know, our performance, our tune, everything, just brings it up. That's really, really important. So yes, that's the #1 reason to use live drums. And if it means that you use a live drummer in a less than ideal recording situation, and you can't quite get the sounds the way you want it to be because you've only got 2 or 3 microphones or whatever it is, it's still a really smart idea because you get that creativity. And if it does mean that you're forced to, as reluctant as you might be, into recording drums and then having to use samples and you're forced into it and you don't want to, it's okay because at least you got their creativity and you got their imagination and you got a human being that you can work with. And like I said, it's the reason why we do Produce Like a Pro. It's the reason why this exists is because it's all about collaboration and working together. We have people in our community that have been able to come out of their shells and share information. There's very few people in here that have anything other than that. It's all about just 100% support of each other. Absolutely love it. And it's a place that I'm proud to be part of, because that is the message. The message is learn from experience. My experience is work with people, collaborate with people, be part of a community, because everybody can help each other out. Project says, please try piezo setups for stuff like cymbals. It takes as much time as to mic. Just as much time as a mic, so you can go crazy on effects. Placement is key. Yes, we're about to put out a video where we talk about that as well, so stay tuned for that. Okay, any other super chat questions? And who won? I didn't see who won. Oh, Joshua, can you point these out to me rather than me having to look for them?
Yes.
So Joshua, can you get a good drum sound in an 8x10 room? Yeah, why not? I mean, I'm visualizing it. It's not massive, but yes. So if it's super dead, then close mic it, close mic the drums. Don't think about ambience, just close mic the drums, and then get big fat tones. You actually, if it's a dead room, you won't get that much bleed in a small room. If it's live and super squared off, then you might get some weird standing waves, but I've done some really great dead drum sounds in small rooms. And then if you want to add ambience to it and make it great, you can. I think you can easily do that. Any other super chats?
Last one.
That was the last one?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So if anybody wants to rush to the front, please do it. Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate it. You're very welcome, Ryan. I appreciate it. I'm just looking for questions. Mark just explains his process, that he's forced to use virtual drums. He doesn't have the access to using professional session players. I see tons of questions here. Just trying to find. Red Sand says, "Hi Warren, should I tune?" Where was it? My toms to the key of the song. Some of them sound kind of distant for certain keys of songs. I think you've sort of answered the question there yourself. I agree. You know, if you want to tune the drums to the key of the song and it makes sense, then do it. I think literally just use your ears. Most people I work with don't tune to the key of the songs, but then when I worked with Don Smith, who is one of my favorite engineers of all time, God rest his soul, he was a huge mentor of mine in the mid-late 90s. I did a record with him as a musician and learned so much. And one of his things was he brought in Ross Garfield, the drum doctor, and we tuned the snare to the key of the song, and then we had to do-da-do-do. So we had 1 B 5 ba-ba-dum-ba in the key of the song. So the key of the song was ba-dum-da, do-da-dum-da. You know what I mean? It just was absolutely gorgeous for him to do that. Doesn't necessarily have to be on every song, but it worked on that song, was really wonderful. So I think your answer to your question yourself, it's like, does it feel like it needs to? And if it needs to, then definitely do it. Okay, I see we have a question here. With all the digital tools, this is from Nog Nogforada. No, I don't know what that means. Nogada? Is it Nogada? Anyway, Nogada says, for all the digital tools and unlimited tracks at your disposal when mixing virtual drums, would you trust humanize these softwares for an album? Sure. You know, just use your ears. A lot of modern rock stuff I hear is so unbelievably gridded. There is absolutely no emotion coming out of the music. It's, you know, but that's part of the sound. Sometimes they want that super, super clinical, and there is no emotional kind of like, there's no swing, there's no groove, but that's part of what they're doing. You know, if you go back to the prog of the early prog guys and, you know, like Genesis and stuff like that, the late 60s and through the 70s, you know, they were playing somewhat mathematically, but they had so much more groove and swing. You know, they were classical based with blues added to it. That's really kind of where those guys came from. Now we're in this sort of math rock world where people write parts and then assemble them into songs, as opposed to writing songs and then writing parts to it. You know what I mean? It's neither's right or wrong. I'm not trying to pass judgment. But if you write a song like a Pink Floyd song where Roger Waters would write songs and then bring them to the band and then they would arrange it, that's one thing. But then there was also moments in Pink Floyd where the band are writing together, and then it's more experimental. And some of the best instrumentals ever are Pink Floyd instrumentals. So my point is like, what is the ultimate resource? I think that if you are trying to get groove and swing and you're only programming with virtual drums, then just listen, try the humanize, push and pull it, see what it does. I mean, I've had to many times take a snare and lay it back across the whole song and just sit there and cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste, you know, blah, 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 blah. Cut, push, drag back, sorry, cut, drag it back, cut, drag it back, cut, drag it back, just to make it feel like a human being playing, so it doesn't go do that, do that, do that. It goes don't God, do God, do God. You know, it's just got a little lateness to it. So yeah, it's listen and see if it benefits. You know, otherwise sometimes the math rock is the way to go. Stuart Crowley in New Zealand says, I'm using a Ludwig Black Beauty 14x5 and would like to mic it top and bottom. Any recommendations for mics? Okay, so old favorites, if you've been watching any of the mix breakdown videos or the inside the song breakdowns that we're doing, Michael Beinhorn, Bradley Cook, Jack Douglas, so many great guys. Michael I'm a big fan of. Obviously Jack I'm a huge fan of, and Michael I'm a huge fan of as well. Both New Yorkers. And you know, Michael talks about using a 57 top and bottom. And it's, honestly, that is a good starting point, and you can't go wrong. Then other people talk about putting condensers on the bottom. I actually don't really like a condenser on the bottom, but I do like the idea of what a lot of people do, and that's strapping a condenser alongside a 57 on the top. Try that out. If you are going to use a condenser on the top, bear in mind that condensers don't have that tight of a polar pattern. So do a little research. There is a Neumann vocal microphone, and I'm blanking on its name at the moment, that has a hypercardioid pattern that's condenser. Jack likes to use that on the top. So there's different microphones. I'm blanking on the times, but I would experiment. If you want to try pencil condensers, do it. Put the pencil condenser on the bottom and the 57 on the top, so the 57 gives you a little bit of rejection. You can also do things like put little pieces of cardboard around the mic to try and stop some of the rejection and increase the rejection for hi-hat. It doesn't do a huge amount of difference, but it does help a bit. I've seen people put pieces of foam around a condenser on there just to help rejection. Whatever you can to do it. Be careful not to hit the mic pre too hard, because you'll start squaring off the transients on the condenser and then bring in all the background stuff, which of course will be cymbal bleed. But I would always start with a 57 top and bottom or something like it, just as a reference point, and then take it from there. And there's no problem with those. Any other super chats?
No other super chats.
Okay, cool. Have I ever met Jeff Lynne? No, I haven't, but I'm a huge... oh, Kevin White, I bought Out of the Blue when it was new as well. How do you approach high mids? All the reference tracks have a profound clarity in the high mid section that I struggle to replicate, says Way. Yeah, I mean, with drum mixes in particular, you know, it does get super detailed. That's where everything is cymbals and the crack on the snare and the hi-hat, as well as obviously the regular, and the definition on the click on the kick. I mean, we're all talking mids, high mids there, and it does get really messy. You know, that's where you do need to think about the cymbals. And if the cymbals are bleeding into everything and far too loud, that's really the number one thing. It is such an important deal. And I keep mentioning it purely and simply because without that thought process, you're always going to have issues. Legal Drum, appreciate you showing a mixing process that usually with tracks that are recorded with pros like you. Would you show a mix of tracks you're recording in a home studio with less experience? Yeah, tons. We have tons of that stuff. So in the Academy, we have like full-blown recorded on tape transfer to Pro Tools. Then we have like the Lewitt mic selection. Now, Eric, if you can flip over to the screen for a second, just to illustrate my point. You know, the drums that we recorded here, or we're using the Lewitt mics, for instance, you have to remember that these are just plugged straight into the Audient with no fanciness. That's the Lewitt drum mic package, and no fancy EQ, no compression, just put in a decent position without clipping. It's really as simple as that. So the drum sounds, let's have a listen. I did the mix, so if you watch the other two videos, you'll see it. hear the drums solo. Now you've heard them in the track. So why am I playing you that? I'm playing you that to illustrate that the main things about that were, and this goes back to the Dave Jordan quote. I love this quote. And I'm going to paraphrase it. Dave said to me, he goes, sometimes as a producer and an engineer, you have to get in there and rewrite the song. Do every single thing you have to do. Work on every single part with the drummer, the guitar player, the bass player, the singer. Work on the lyrics, the arrangement, the tempo, the key. Sometimes you have to throw out the song and rewrite a brand new one. And other times you just have to get out of the way of the band and help them make a great recording. That is the skill of production, is knowing when to apply all of the knowledge that you have. Sometimes you just get out of the way. In this instance here, it is some inexpensive mics. It's the Lewitt drum package. I don't know what it is, like $800 or something like that. Okay, it's not free and it's not super cheap. There's cheaper ones, but pretty inexpensive to record some drums through an Audient. I believe it was the model down from this with the 8-channel ASP 800 added to it. So keeping inexpensive. I think we estimated about $2,500, $3,000 worth of gear. But, you know, not cheap, but definitely affordable. And what's the difference? The difference is just the drummer in the room. You know, all the ambience, people asking, was all done with reverb plugins. There is a room mic, but I put a reverb on it. I put the free comes with my DAW Pro Tools room mic on it. So that's really honestly all that's going on. It's all about the drummer and the drum performance and putting the mics in the right place and not distorting them. So when you talk about the difference between pros and the rest of us, you're like going, oh, you know, Warren, you're a professional. Yeah, I've made records, I've made #1 albums, I've mixed blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. This all sounds fantastic, and I've got lots of gold and platinum records. All very well and good. But really, in this instance, the skill was not messing it up. That was the skill. And that you can do very easily. You, everybody watching, you could do this. You could record this the same way I did. In fact, we just put the mics up in the same position, taped them in some instances next to the expensive microphones. And I think, quite frankly, I said to Eric, just set up the levels so they don't distort. Did you set these ones up in the masterclass?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I just said to him, just make sure they don't distort. So he just, when Greg was playing, he just turned the gain up. So it wasn't hitting clip on every single mic pre. That was it. So this illusion that like there's some magical professional like woohoo, it's not. It's just using basic logic. Print a good level. Doesn't have to be too loud. Doesn't have to be too quiet. Just somewhere in the middle of rational, you know, stuff. Don't worry about the, oh my God, you know, I only work at minus U.5 dB UFQ971. All of that is absolute meaningless schnizzle. All you need to do is just print somewhere in the middle of logic with no clipping. We're living in a world now where digital recording with these Lewitt mics, which are almost zero noiseless microphones. Michael in the mix the other day did a test where he turned down and printed super, super quiet and then printed super, super loud. And he used the Lewitt. And he was like, oh, I expected the noise to come up. And it's like, yes, but you used a zero noise microphone. Now, if I'd used a cheap Radio Shack mic, no disrespect to Radio Shack, that goes and has a noise floor like this against the signal, then of course it would be different. But my point is like now, inexpensive microphones, and it's not just Lewitt. Lewitt are a favorite, but the point is like lots of companies now are making equipment that is so high quality for the price. So don't worry about putting thinking that you're not able to record at this quality, because you can. The rest of it was the mix. So this drum sound is the mics in a logical place, of which I've done 20 videos on how to mic up drums. And if you stick around in 5 minutes, you can win another one. And the reality is like you can record it like this. Now, if somebody decides they want to compress an EQ and destroy it on the way in, then that's where sometimes you're forced to use samples. But this actually shouldn't be that difficult to record like this. It's just leaving all the compression, all of the EQ and all the fancy stuff for later and putting it on the mix. One more time, let's have a listen. And we can do it before and after. I can turn off all of the mics. Sorry, all of the plugins. So what I'm going to do now, I am going to duplicate, don't need the alternate playlists, and I'm just going to duplicate this kit. And I'm going to call this all Lewitt, no plugins, just so you can get an idea of what we did. So now, here's the second set. So I've got, my fault. My fault. Okay, so now I have the two groups. So now what I'm going to do with this group is just send it to 1 and 2 output. So now this is just the before. This is the recording of the drums, just no EQ, no compression, as they came. So it's not even going through a drum bus, so I can get rid of that duplicated. Oh no, that's the right drum bus over here. So here is a before. It's just balanced. No plugins. We're going to take them all off. So just highlight those there. Let's just bypass all of this schnizzle. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure this is done properly. It's important that we do it properly for testing purposes. Okay, so now this is the drum sound. So all this is the microphones in a good position, going, I haven't even heard it like this, going directly into the audience with no compression, no EQ, no plugins, nothing. This is where we started. That is attainable by any of you. Any of you. That's not a professionals thing. That's a very, very simple microphones in the right place. You can watch all of my videos with no compression, no EQ. All we did was put them in the right place and we had a good drummer in a decent sounding room. Now, here's the after. The before. after. And one more time, the before. Okay, it's pretty obvious what's going on. The kick becomes huge, got low end. There's like, you can hear some parallel energy. There's some coming in there. We did parallels. Compression on it. We've got compression EQ on individual elements. The reality is that you can take that drum sound and create that drum sound just using plugins. Most of the plugins we used, all of the plugins we used, we used one REQ here. I should have just used a regular one because all I'm doing is doing high and low pass Abbey Road. But everything else, there's an L2 limiter there. Everything could be achieved because with the only reverb we're using is a stock one. Everything can be achieved. You could do that with stock drum plugins. And there is no samples. So that drum sound, that after drum sound could be done with stock plugins, with affordable microphones and an affordable I/O. Just put the microphones in the right place. Don't clip the input stage. Don't clip the microphone, so pad if necessary. Don't clip going into the inexpensive interface, and use stock plugins. The only differentiator, and what we keep talking about, is a good drummer. That's it. A good drummer with a great performance. That is the only major differentiator here. Everything else is totally achievable. What I highly recommend is go back and watch those other two videos. Eric, would you put up the videos, the two preceding ones on the drum mixing of this, so you can see how we got there? Scott Chandler says, I say that when I recorded drums on my Audient ID44, I used channel 1 and 2 for the toms and I had wonderful results. I used external preamps for kick and snare, but the sound I got was impressive. Yeah, I mean, that's all done with Audient mic pre's. And again, look, I like Audient as a company. They've been very, very supportive to our community, incredibly supportive. But I'm not here to sell any one particular one. I'm just telling you, I like the company, I like the products. However, if you've got a Focusrite, you've got an RME, you've got whatever, you know, Steinberg we used the other day, wonderful sounding equipment. UAD make amazing equipment. You know, check out tomorrow, we're using the UAD stuff. That's the point. All of these things can get you that results. That results was a good drummer and then a mix. When would you use a pad on overhead mics? When it's clipping, when I hear audible clipping. So really it's just like, and if you're not sure and you can't hear the audible clipping, then you could pad it in just in case, if the drummer's insanely loud and the snare's like, you know, massively loud. So my point is like, I know you can get those results. I believe in you all that you could get that drum result and that you could walk away with that. Now, when we do the master classes, people do walk away with these multi-tracks and they know that they are involved in it and they've learned that they can do this. So it's a big, big deal. All of that, no drum samples, inexpensive mics, inexpensive equipment, and the rest of it was using mixing with free or very cheap plugins. So it can be done. You can get that results in Pro Tools, Reaper, Cubase, Nuendo, FL Studio, you name it. All of those things can be done, you know, in any of those, any of them. Any single DAW can give you those results. Any single decent, you know, probably pretty much entry-level I/O can give you those results. Then it just comes down to like, who do you want to talk to? Who do you like? What companies are good? Do they have a community that's supportive? You know, if it blows up, are you going to get it repaired? You know, those are the things that we ask constantly. In our dealings with Audient, they've been very supportive. If we ever have any issues, which we rarely ever do, and we have a lot of gear that comes through here, the companies that we stick with and we showcase are companies that are supportive of us because we have such a great community here. And I don't want to tell everybody this is a great product when it's not. But my point is like, you can do this. You can do this. And you can do this with affordable gear. And, you know, I go to a lot of YouTube channels and the drum sounds are And I'm thinking, why are they not amazing? Why are you teaching people not to be able to mix really big drum sounds? That's a big drum sound. You should be able to get that. We just proved it with very inexpensive equipment. And like Rick says, he loves recording drums. Recording drums is absolutely amazing. What is your most unusual technique or favorite trick when recording drums, Warren? Mark, It's the microphone on the floor in front of the cymbal. That's where it sounds absolutely amazing. Yes, I like my Cali LP6. There's a good example, Cali LP6s. First person to review them, talk about how amazing they sound. Now they are universally accepted as pretty much the best speakers you can get for $300. Great company, really easy to deal with. If I want to text one of the owners of the company now, they will respond. If one of our members has a problem with it, which they rarely do, but if they did, they would replace it, they would fix it. This is the world we like. This is why we talk about these kind of companies, because it's all about the back, isn't it? It's all about looking after people. And if they don't look after people, then, you know, we'll move on. Okay, I'm going to go do another giveaway. Okay, first of all, please hit the like button, and we're going to do another giveaway to win Matt Starr's Producing Drums course. And I would love to see, we have 347 people watching. Thank you ever so much. If you could hit the like button, that would be amazing. It'd be great to get it up to 347 likes. That would be great. And the next thing I want to know is, like, knowing that we can do this and that you know you can do this because you can see the results here, the before and the after. Eric is going to give you click a link to download these files, and also to watch the other 2 free videos that we did on mixing it, so you know how you can get these results. Okay, so I know you can do it because we did it, and we did it together, and we did that live. We live streamed those mixing, and it was all done on headphones. So if I can get those results on a pair of blue headphones with inexpensive mics and inexpensive I/O, I know you can do it too. So go take those, go watch those 2 videos, download the multi-tracks, come back and watch this, pull it together. I know you can do it. Okay, so please hit the like button. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already shared, please share the video. It means a lot, and it also tells YouTube that people are watching and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, what do I want to know? What mics do you use on drums? If you're miking drums, and if you don't mic drums and you never recorded them live, you can still enter to win that course by just saying, I don't record drums live, or I haven't yet. But if you do record drums, is there a particular microphone or microphone company that you like? It doesn't have to be what we're doing. You know, let's just, you know, just tell us what you like. What mics do you like? What have you used? Do you have a secret microphone that you love? Give us a little bit of insight into what you do. Here's a good question. What's the audible difference between low-end and mid-grade interface other than the price? Are they really that different? It's pretty negligible. The only thing I've found while using inexpensive interfaces is just to be careful of clipping. Give yourself a little bit more headroom than you would with, you know, an Apogee. If I'm using an Apogee, you know, or my Lavries, the soft clip on the Apogee is a godsend, and it covers a multitude of sins. So if I accidentally hit too hard going in, that's really one of the differentiators between, you know, quote unquote professional equipment. I think everything's professional now because we can make results get great results, as we proved, on any particular stuff. But my point is like, that's one of the things. Just make sure you don't print too hot through the interface. You're going to start clipping it in ways that you're not going to appreciate when you start putting in compression on it. That's really, other than that, you can get great results. And remember, almost everybody uses the same chip. Doesn't matter it's a $200 device or a $2,000 device. They're all using the same internal chip. It's just the electronics around it which gets it to the chip. Okay, so I'm seeing some great drum mic stuff here. D112, RE20, 57, 441, hi-hat SM81, toms 421, overheads 451. Wonderful. Beta 56 on toms, awesome for the money. Beta 52 on kick, 57 snare top only, SM7 on hats. I love the SM7 on hats. 414s for Evers. Never intended to do mostly Shure, but I just like the sound. Yeah, we've got great results on Shure. I did a Shure drum package shootout at Sunset Sound, and we got amazing results. King Belzy, are you a member of the Academy? Most of the people you're talking to here are Academy members. I'm not sure if you are. Bought my first Lewitt products, pair of LCD 340 overheads, and love them. Thank you, Jonathan. Rode NT2s, AE 3000. Oh, it's a beautiful mic. J. Peters 421s on toms. Broken Famous Productions 57s, D12 450, about a foot in front, very nice. Audix D6, kick in, D12, kick out. Sennheiser E609 on toms, those are great. So the video we're putting up tomorrow is actually using mainly Sennheiser mics, so I really highly recommend you go to that. Oh, the Solomon low frequency kick, we have that one, don't we? Is it the Solomon? Yeah, the Solomon's great, really, really good. What lavalier mic did you use? Here, it's a Sennheiser. Yeah, King Belzer, you'll love it. Don't record drums live, says Tessa. The mics I use are the iRig mics. My experience, I really like how the Audix D4 mic sounds on drum. D6 otherwise the kick drum mic. I mean, I like if you want to talk kick drum mics, here's an interesting discussion. Somebody the other day said to me, Warren, you know, talking about the mics I use, going, I can't believe you use the D112. He said, they said it's the worst kick drum mic. It really isn't. The thing why traditionally people didn't like, oh, save your money. I'll get to your question in a second, thank you. It's really not. The D112 is actually quite a versatile mic. It's just, one of the problems that people have is it's a little non-committal. You've got the D12, the classic D12, which was just all the low mid thud and low end thud. Didn't go super low like 40 or 60, it was like 80 to 100, it was like thuddy. Then you have something as dramatic as a D6, which is like and Audix, which is a great mic and perfect for rock. Stick it inside, immediately it's a rock kick. The D112 is somewhat in the middle. It's a bit scooped. It has a little bit of high mid boost, it has a bit of low end boost, but it's just, why people love it and the why like Joe Ciccarelli and me and Michael Beinhorn and Dave Jordan and Jack Douglas and all of these, you know, those guys, super famous producers and engineers use it, you know, and that immediately means it's not crap. But the reason why they use it is because it gives you enough of a frequency spectrum that you can tweak it from there. It sounds good initially, not too hyped, and not too soft, and it allows you to boost it and make it more aggressive or make it less aggressive. It's a good middle of the road. The thing with the D6, it's fantastic, but you can't use it to get a 70s drum sound. I'm speaking a little bit about save your money here. You're not going to get a 70s drum sound from it. And then the one that that was being touted was a Beta 52. The Beta is a good mic, the Shure Beta, but it's a neodymium capsule, so it's very, very doik, 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 doik. And so most people that end up mixing spend a long time trying to bring out some of those, reduce some of those aggressive mids that aren't really complementary to a kick drum sound. Now, it's okay. I'm no judgment. If you're using the Shure, it can be really, really good. But if I'm going to go for a scoopy sound, I actually personally prefer either the Sennheiser, which is amazing, or the Audix. The Sennheiser has always given me great results. I usually used to use it a lot outside the kick drum, pulled back equal distance from the kick drum, and it gave me an amazing kick drum sound. Again, I will always go with the D112 because I can shape the drum sound any way I like with that. It's a little bit hyped, but not overly hyped. If I'm going for full-blown rock, Audix D6 all the way, absolutely phenomenal mic. If I'm going for a 70s dry drum sound, yeah, of course, a D12 is going to win every single time. So, save your money on that 70s drum sound. Great question. For the 70s drum sound, I would certainly go with a less hyped microphone, like a D1, like a D12. If you don't have that kind of microphone, then just get a large diaphragm kick mic and put it outside. Or, a lot of the times they were using things like RE20s. You could probably even, don't laugh, get away with 421. 57, push comes to shove. All of those couple of first Van Halen records were 57s. You can get away with 57s. Cheaper still, 546s. Basically what I would do with the dry drum sound from the 70s is use a small, dead room. Your smallest bedroom, make sure it's dead. Use close mics and make sure that the drummer performs really evenly and gets good tone. So hit the drum so that you get good bounce back. So it's boof, boof. If the drummer is taking the the stick and laying it into the snare like this, you will not get a good drum sound. You need center of the drum, and you need good bounce back. It needs to be boof, boof, and you're going to need to deaden the snare drum down so it's just the right amount of sustain. Get the moon gels out. Maybe try a little bit of tape. Try my trick with the penny and the tape. Get the drums sounding super dead and super fat before you even stick a mic on it. Once you've got the drums sounding really, really good without a huge amount of decay and without like unwanted rings, then start close miking. And close mic, and then the next thing is make sure that the drummer performs really evenly, gets great tone on every single tom, on the snare, on the kick, and doesn't overplay the cymbals. In that dead room, if you make it super small and dead, you will get a good 70s drum sound. You know, that's really the way to go. Am I doing a live stream on Thursday? I'm not sure. On July the 4th. I'm not sure. I actually can't answer that. Probably not. Probably taking July the 4th off. We are going to do a massive sale for those that are interested. I haven't used a Audix F12. I don't know what that is. Yeah, put a bologna sandwich on the snare. That's what Shelley would do. Okay, who won? Did we choose somebody yet?
Yes.
Who won? Garrison Hampton. A CAD Trion 8000. Wonderful. Okay, well, we've got 14 more minutes left. Let's see if I can find a couple more questions. If anybody wants to hit Super Chat, I will push them to the front of the queue. Thank you for those people that have already done that. And please hit the like button. It really means a lot when you hit the like button and it tells people we're online. Zach says, hey Warren, I feel like I've seen you talk about using figure eight patterns on tom and use face to stop bleed before, and I'm unsure how to understand how it works. Could you explain that more in detail? I haven't personally done it yet. The video to watch is, what was the name? From Barefoot Studios. That's where they were talking about it, about getting good rejection, cymbal rejection. I would honestly go back and watch that. I haven't personally tried it. I think it's a very interesting idea, and I do really, really like it. However, it would be, you know, making sure that because what's happening is if the cymbals are being printed exactly opposite the overheads, there will be cancellation. So the theory is you've got a microphone pointing down at the toms. So the capsule is seeing the tom like this. Also, the overhead mic is pointing down and seeing it like that. However, the cymbals coming from the back are going to be hearing the cymbals this way and the overhead mic that way. So the theory is if you take the cymbal mic and the tom mic and make them equal distance from each other and the cymbals in the middle, there could be great, beautiful polarity, wonderful issues, because the back end of that mic and the front end of that mic will be hearing the cymbal equal distance away, therefore getting exact opposite polarity, meaning they should phase cancel. That is the principle of it. It's quite an interesting idea. So think about it. You've got a figure of eight mic, which has a capsule, obviously seeing front and back. So it's hearing the tom here, but it's also picking up the cymbal from the back. And then you have an overhead mic picking up the cymbal from the back there. So in theory, if they're both seeing opposite, one is seeing the waveform like this and the other seeing the waveform like that. I'll do that again slowly. One will see the waveform like this and the other one will seeing it like that. And if they're up together in the mix, they should, in theory, phase cancel so that when the cymbal plays the tom at the same time, it should cancel. However, I have not tried it yet. But that's the principle that they're talking about. Haven't yet tried it. So I don't know, try it. Can I use a large diaphragm condenser in place of a 47 FET? Yeah, absolutely. What would be the strategy, Alexandra? I do it all the time. In fact, I talked about that when we did the How to Save a Life. Oh no, you found me. I haven't done How to Save a Life yet. We need to find that. We need to do How to Save a Life. When I did the drums on How to Save a Life, which I think would be really, really cool to talk about, I used a minimal amount of mics on that, and it sounded really, really fantastic. But I think that, yeah, we did How to Save a Life, and You Found Me. So when I was doing You Found Me on the second album, sorry, I'm getting off track here. I think I told this story. I had a FET 47, but we didn't have a live bass player. We did have a guy, but he didn't last the record. So Then Dan Rothschild came in and I needed to be able to use the FET 47 on his amp. So I took the FET 47 off, put it on the flip top, the Ampeg flip top, which he flew in with, which sounded phenomenal. And there suddenly I'm left with no kick drum, outside kick drum mic. So I took an Audio-Technica, about a $500 or $600 large diaphragm microphone, and I put it in place of the FET 47. I swear blind, it sounded better. It sounded better. So, what does that teach us? It teaches us that Audio-Technica microphones are great. They're a really great company. They make great microphones. Those of you in Europe will know them very well. They're not very popular in America. I don't think they've had anybody really championing them here well that's into recording. I haven't seen anybody really sort of like champion them. I think that they deserve it. But they don't get talked about enough here. But that's the number one thing. The second thing is, quite frankly, is there's lots of other good companies that make great large diaphragm condensers. Somebody was asking about 540s earlier, saying they bought them apart from each other and they're worried that can they still be a matched pair? Yes, they can. That's the reason why we champion Lewitt a lot, is basically any pair of microphones you buy from Lewitt match perfectly. So, and any affordable large diaphragm would do a really good job. I think a $300 large diaphragm on the kick would work well. If you're worried about it, you can always put a pad on it if they don't come with a pad on some of the cheaper ones. Just buy one of those pads that you can put in line before going to the mic pre, but pad the mic if you can by -10 dB, and you will get a great result. Pretty much any large diaphragm microphone. Once I figured out that the FET 47 was not the savior of the microphone and was not the savior of the kick drum, I realized I could put any large diaphragm condenser that was available in the studio on the outside kick mic, and I got wonderful, wonderful results. There's a typo under giveaways on the yearly subscription pay for membership, so just so you know. Oh, I'm not sure. You have to tell Matt about that.
I'm on it.
You're on it? Okay, good. Of your 3 pairs of monitors, which do you prefer for mixing drums? Also, do you often use one room mic or go stereo? If I've got stereo in phase with the drums, always, but I like a mono too. You know, the differences are a mono mic I usually crush a little bit more and use for energy. And the stereo I usually keep a little bit more accurate, maybe put a little bit more compression or EQ or grit on it. But usually that's an accurate representation of the full kit. So that usually gets a little less destruction on it. The mono I will destroy quite easily just to add some energy. Those are the purposes for me for mono and stereo mics. If I've only got a mono, then I'll keep it cleaner and I'll put a lot of stereo verb on it to try and make the drums sound bigger. That's really my thought process with using those kind of different things. As far as the monitors that I use, I'm in a world now where the Genelecs I've been using for 20 years and know really, really well. The Focals have a tweeter, which is, I believe this is the magnesium, aluminum or aluminium and magnesium alloy ones. And the tweeters are really, really nice to work on for long hours. So if we do get marathon sessions, I might set up tones and stuff on the Genelecs, but then live a lot on the Focals. What is interesting for me is I started on NS10s, and I enjoyed working on the Genelecs instead of the NS10. So I get tones on the NS10s and then spend more time on the Genelecs. Now I get tones and mixing on the Genelecs, but try to spend more time on the Focals because they're softer. And then the Calis are just the best speakers we know for the price. So we use those, you know, really to do everything on and to showcase the fact that you can make music on $300 speakers. You know, it's important for me to practice what you preach. We do a lot of stuff using the Audient. We're using it at the moment. We do a lot of stuff using affordable gear, using Lewitt's. Our drum mics are always a Lewitt on the kit. I think we have a 57 on the top, but the overheads, I'm looking now, are both Lewitt's. The kick drum mic is a Lewitt. One of the toms is a Lewitt and the other one's an AKG, and the hat is an SM7. So it's a hodgepodge, but it's 75% Lewitt. So, you know, we're practicing what we preach. Joel Overy says, how do you feel about Steve Albini's idea of a biodynamic M380 on kick in figure 8 and gets what he calls pistonic action from the heads and less basketball ring? I like it. I like the Bayer. I think that, you know, the sound of the kick drum is the sound of the kick drum. So if you're getting, if your kick drum is sounding bad and you're getting too much doing, going, deal with that first before you experiment with, you know, esoteric mics or having a massive mic collection. You really need, a lot of this conversation is about getting the source right. I think that, you know, if you can't get the source right, and then you have a massive collection of microphones that you can do that with, then great. But really, the boinging kind of basketball kick comes from the kick drum. And just getting that, you know, we were talking about earlier, getting that kick drum to sound just right, dampening the front head just a little bit, the beta head just a little bit, and getting it great is going to give you much better results than spending, you know, lots of money on a massive mic collection. Don't get me wrong, I love mics. I love the mic collection. If you're moving fast, the band's coming in, they're loading in, and you don't have time to work with the drummer, and you have a microphone that's going to solve a problem, then great. But do spend a little bit of time on the drums and getting the drum sound right before you even stick a mic on it, and then a lot of these issues will go away. That was the big deal. All of these microphones we're talking about here were inexpensive, using an inexpensive mic interface, and then using practically stock plugins to get a big drum sound. So we know it can be done with a good drummer in a decent room with good sounding mics. Good sounding drums, sorry. That's where it starts from. If it starts from that, then the rest of your job, you don't have to be the world's greatest engineer to get a great drum sound. You just need to follow basic logic. Don't clip your interface. Don't clip your mics, pad them if you have to, and then everything will make sense after that. So great question though, I really appreciate it. Have I ever used an SSD5? Any thoughts on virtual? I have never used that one, but I do use, you know, Addictive, and we have a drum plugin eventually coming out as well. So there's lots of different things going on. Can you stick a LCT 640 inside one of the capsules facing in reverse phase? I mean, try it. I mean, I don't see why not. It's not something I would think of, and I don't necessarily think it would really do any good. I mean, it wouldn't sound bad, but I think of better things I would do the 640. If I had the 640 TS, I would put it over the drum kit down the middle of it and see perfect stereo separation. I mean, that's one of the beauties. I believe the 640 TS is probably the most underrated microphone ever made. I think it's one of the best microphones ever made. When I was interviewing and talking to Lewitt a couple of weeks ago when we were in Vienna, or a month ago now when we were in Vienna, I kept telling them, you need to do another relaunch of that, or whatever the word is, to just get people to realize that is one of the most revolutionary and best microphones on the market. I see a couple of other companies have copied the idea and doing their version of it. The 640 TS is one of the best microphones ever made. It's pretty affordable. It's not free, it's not cheap, but it's affordable, and it's the best stereo sound you're ever going to hear in your entire life. It sounds phenomenal. I cannot wax more lyrically about that. CAD mics, I used some great CAD mics. The original CAD mics back when I was in England, in the United Kingdom years ago, were absolutely phenomenal. You know, I absolutely love them. I think they're making more inexpensive mics now. We did end up using a few of them and had great results when we did the Aerosmith record, and we used them for mono room mics and special effects and put them on cymbals and stuff, and had a really, really good time with them. And so, yeah, I can't say anything but good for them. I did answer that question about the mono room mics as a stereo. I use the mono room mic as a crush and destroy it, and sometimes saturate it for energy. So it's just a summation of the whole drum kit in mono, and then I use the stereo microphones to give me width and a more accurate sound of the drums in the room. What is your theory or method for make a sample kick sound like a big stadium drum without a reverb washout sound? I'm not sure. I mean, if I'm going to take a sample, if I wanted to do that, I'm not really thinking that way, but if I did want to do that, then yes, it could feed a reverb. That would be a great way of doing it, or use a sample that already has the ambience on it. Reverb doesn't have to be washed out. I mean, it can be really clear. And remember, you know, if you want a big stadium sound, you've just got to get that EQ on the verb just right, because you don't want so much low end that it destroys your whole mix. So it's definitely about EQing on before your reverb. And then you can EQ afterwards if you like, but I like to EQ before. AT4040 is great for overheads. Okay, Last giveaway and a year's membership. That's a good idea. Reverb. If you use reverb on drums, what reverb do you use? How about that? Reverb plugin. What do you use? Have you got a reverb plugin? What's your favorite one for your drum sound? Good question. Talking about reverb. What is your favorite reverb? I'm glad you enjoyed the John Lennon episode. Please check it out. Eric will also, give you links to all of the videos leading up to this one on the drum discussion, so you can get that same drum sound. We'll listen to those drum sounds now, the before and after. No samples, inexpensive mics, inexpensive equipment. Just listen to the before and after. In the meantime, tell us, what is your favorite reverb? This is to win the Matt Starr Producing Drums course, which he also talks about using the Glyn Johns technique. He also did the course at Tommy Lee's studio, so you'll enjoy that. And of course, you can win a 1 year's membership to the Academy. If you're already an Academy member, you can get an extension on that, or you can choose any course that you want. Okay, and please hit that like button and share. It says over 300 people watching. Let's hit that like button. All right, here are the drums with all the fancy, all the mixes going on. This is no samples, using Lewitt microphones. It's an audio interface. You know, I'm going to go back. Oh no, this is a good part of the song. So that is all the drums with the with just inexpensive microphones, and let's go and check out the same drums with no compression, no EQ, no mix. This is just live in the room. So you know you can mix those drums because there was no samples. Here they are, dry, no mix. Okay, so that is the before. That's what you can do just using inexpensive mics and an inexpensive interface. And here is the after with just, you know, one of the most expensive plugins we have here is an MJUC. It's $27, Klanghelm. Go check them out, great company. Cool. So there you go. We were talking about the differences between, you know, quote unquote professional and unprofessional. Honestly, like I said, all we did was tape those mics together with the expensive ones, and then we just printed with no compression, no EQ, and made sure they didn't clip. And that is the rest of it's just mixing with no drum samples. So you know you can do it. You can get a huge drum sound. You can get great drum sounds. The most important thing is the drummer and the performance. And in a room that sounds good enough. And if you don't have a big room, it's okay. There really is so many tips and tricks to get it. But number one is don't clip on the way in. Don't clip your microphone, pad it if necessary, and don't clip the coming into here, and you can do it. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, as they say. Congratulations to Delvin. Thank you everybody that watched. If you haven't already, hit the like button. Please hit the like button on the way out. So we'll be big, but we'll be bad, and we'll be back. I'm not sure if we're going to do Thursday. Thursday is, after all, July the 4th here, but we are doing a massive sale on loads of good, fun things, so check that out. But most importantly, tomorrow, check back tomorrow. There is going to be an incredible video and a whole bunch of drum samples that you can download for free. Check it out tomorrow. Drums recorded in a castle. Drums in a castle. Get it? Drums in a castle. Come back tomorrow for, what is it, Eric? What are we doing tomorrow?
Drums in the castle.
Couldn't hear you. Say it again.
Drums in the castle.
Drums in a castle. Okay. Love you lots. You've been absolutely marvelous. Thank you for being so positive and being an amazing part of our community. Duplicating your click. Yes, you can do that. Just in the same kind of technique. Bob Marlette does something similar to that. See you all again very soon. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Thank you everybody who did the super chat. We appreciate it. It goes towards buying us lunch. And have a marvelous time recording and mixing. I'll see you all again soon. Don't forget tomorrow, Drums in a Castle.